MC Laubscher here, the host of the Cashflow Ninja podcast and also the president and chief wealth and investment strategist of Producers Wealth, where we help our clients integrate cashflow banking, also known as infinite banking, with their business and investments. If you're interested in learning more about how we create strategies that integrate cashflow banking and investments to turbocharge them, you can access a video series at yourownbankingsystem.com. That's yourownbankingsystem.com.
Welcome to the Cashflow Ninja, the podcast sharing how to create income streams and manage, multiply, and protect your wealth in the new economy. Here is your host inside the dojo, MC Laubscher.
Hello, Cashflow Ninjas. MC Laubscher here, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Ninja. I have a great show for you today. In today's show, we're going to look at how to create a legacy for your family. In this episode, I will share a conversation I had with Hunter Thompson on the Cashflow Connections podcast. When I first met Hunter and was interviewed on his show, I was really impressed with his commitment to producing a phenomenal show, really doing his research and homework on guests, and also spending time figuring out which angles on certain subjects would provide maximum value for his listeners. I've become good friends with Hunter and have continued to be impressed by Hunter and the value that he provides and produces on his show for his listeners and also his investors and clients at Cashflow Connections. Hunter has been interviewed twice on the show. Episode 178, How to Add Value to Self-Storage Investments, and episode 344, How to Perform Due Diligence on Commercial Real Estate. You can check out both episodes at cashflowninja.com/178 and cashflowninja.com/344. If you're interested in joining our investors group, you can go to cashflowninja.com/investors group and fill out an application form and or email me at info@cashflowninja.com to start the discussion to see if you're a good fit for our group.
Are you having a hard time finding great investment properties? Unfortunately, the best deals are rarely found locally. Successful investing begins with the right properties in the right markets. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best deals across the United States. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly cash flow. Learn how to find the best deals by downloading your free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Passive Real Estate Investing at noradarealestate.com. That's NORADA realestate.com.
How's it going, everyone? Our guest for today is MC Laubscher, who is a wealth strategist, educator, and financial freedom fighter. He is the president and CEO of Producers Wealth and creator and the host of the popular business and investing podcast, Cashflow Ninja. His mission is to help as many people as possible eliminate the control banks and financial institutions have over their lives by building wealth in a variety of ways outside of Wall Street. He believes that the best way to achieve this is by reclaiming the banking function in our own financial lives through structuring an efficient cash flow management system and creating and building assets that provide multiple streams of income. MC has also been a guest on the program before. You can check out that episode. It's episode 15. That will be available in the show notes page. MC, it's an honor to have you on. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be on your show again and excited to connect. We always have a great conversation.
Totally. I was actually a guest on MC's show not too long ago. Definitely one of my favorite interviews that we can do, and I'll link to that as well. But we always have a good time. I think we think about the world very similarly, which is one of the reasons that I'm really interested in this particular conversation. But before we get into all of that, let's do a brief background for the listeners that maybe haven't heard that previous episode. Give us a little background about who you are, how you got interested in these interesting topics.
Yeah, so I'm originally from South Africa. I came to the United States almost 2 decades ago now. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. So around 2001, I came to the U.S. I played sports up until the league, up until 2007. So I actually played in rugby league. I was a member of the United States men's national player pool for rugby up until 2007. So while I was traveling, I have a background in economics and history. Those were my two favorite topics in school. So I continued my study, came across Rich Dad, Poor Dad's book from Robert Kiyosaki, took me down that rabbit hole and hasn't really stopped. I was just absolutely fascinated just with the mindset and just how the ultra fluent and wealthy individuals just, they don't do the same things. They don't do, but better. They don't do things much different, but they do the complete opposite, and they think opposite of what we think as well. So I studied as much as I can on them, and through a series of events, I've been introduced to a number of folks. Actually met a mentor by accident that was also a very wealthy individual with a very large real estate portfolio. So that can kind of continue my learning. I always joke and say, Hunter, I wasn't smart enough to figure out I needed a mentor at that stage. So it kind of happened by happenstance, but the lessons continued. And I during my journey, I took action. I invested in real estate, bought my first property around that same time, about 2001. So I've continued to be an investor. And as you mentioned, now I have a wealth creation firm called Producers Wealth, where we help with strategy for producers and creators to create, protect, and multiply their wealth in any economy. And I'm also the host of the Cashflow Ninja podcast, where we interview cashflow ninjas that share how to create income in the new economy and information age through asset classes such as real estate, businesses, commodities like gold, silver, oil, paper assets, and also crypto and blockchain assets. So I continue to learn and try to consume information and try to study from the best. And that podcast has been an absolute blast in continuing on that learning trajectory and journey.
Yeah, and when you say that, or when I said recently that the Cashflow Ninja is an incredibly popular show, that is kind of an understatement. I mean, this is definitely one of the leading shows on iTunes regarding some of these topics. In fact, I kind of want to start there. You know, based on the conversations you've had, where do you currently see a lot of the opportunity coming from? What are most of the investors that are on your show? And what are the most business owners that are on your show talking about the most that you think is really going to present the opportunity over the next 10 years or so?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, it's hard to pin it down because there's fantastic guests talking about real estate, right? And the opportunities in real estate. Mobile home parks and self-storage is a discussion that comes up quite a bit, a ton of opportunity. It's recession-proof assets. So with a lot of people believing that the next recession is due, including myself, if you just look at historical performances and market cycles, it's a pretty good avenue to move into. And then there's been some amazing things that people have done in gold and silver. There's a lot of folks positioning themselves in that market again because it's very undesirable at the moment. Not a lot of people are talking about it. And you talk about gold mining stocks, throw that right in that basket with it. And then, there's folks doing amazing things online. I think a lot of people are excited about e-commerce and just the explosion and the potential. You look at the numbers of where we are with regards to American shoppers and global shoppers and the volume that's done online. You could just see the potential that's lying ahead. So a lot of people are excited about that. A lot of people are trying to capitalize on that trend. As far as another online business idea, information is the currency in this information age, right? In the agricultural age, people that controlled farms and the land, they were the big power players in the agricultural age. The Industrial Revolution brought in companies, folks that had manufacturing companies that sort of controlled, had control over their destiny. Information pretty much is very powerful to do that in the time that we're at now. We just see all the stuff going on with Facebook and YouTube and all these behemoths. But as far as information for people like us, the access to it and online education is a enormous opportunity, which a lot of people talk about because I think most people have seen through the school systems. They're seeing through universities. It used to be pretty unpopular 10 years ago to say if you're going to go to college or university, you have to make sure it's a specialized skill that can basically and help you obtain or learn a very high income skill set, right? Like doctors, lawyers, accountants, engineers. Everyone else, there's probably a better use of your time, right? It was very unpopular to say that and highly controversial. You say that now, and everybody's kind of like nodding their head, saying, "Yeah, you're pretty much right on." So, online education is a big one, and then of course crypto and blockchain. That space is still bubbling a little bit quiet now after the massive interest that was generated towards the end of the year. But one thing that I will say, Hunter, is it's been quite interesting to see so many different guests operating so many different businesses in different niches and spaces and using different vehicles to accomplish their goals and using it. So, I like to always just point out that these are simply vehicles. The success that people will have with them is based all upon that person looking back at you in the mirror. You yourself, right? Which is the asset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And that's interesting, especially given how many conversations you've had. The variety of opportunities is there, but at the end of the day, I think I'm hearing a lot of physical assets and business owners, right? That's kind of the key there. So investing in real estate, investing in commodities potentially, and then owning businesses in a variety of different asset classes. Regarding e-commerce, to your point, I think that's really been the main focus of a lot of investors recently that are especially focused on retail. And still, retail brick and mortar sales are responsible for still upwards of 90% of all the transactions that take place in the retail sector right now. So e-commerce is only responsible for somewhere between 10 and 12%, depending which year. Now, that number is only going to go one direction. So I do think there's going to be a significant opportunity still to this day, even though the thesis is quite common. I think that is definitely something wise. So, today we're going to have kind of an open conversation about some of these strategies of some of the ultra wealthy that you've either come in contact with or had conversations with through your podcast or otherwise. I'm really interested to discuss that topic with you. So one of the things that you touched on was that they don't really think about things similarly, but just do a better job. It's really like an inverted version of that. Can you give us some of the examples of that, and then especially examples of that everyday, accredited investors can apply to their own financial planning?
Yeah, absolutely. And you make such a good point again. And I kind of chuckle when I hear it because it's almost like the Seinfeld episode, right? Where George Costanza walks into the diner and he says to Jerry, I've been doing everything wrong. I should have been doing the opposite of everything that I've been doing in my life, right? And anyway, so some of the opposite stuff that they do is a lot of your audience already knows is the cash flow model. They follow the cash flow model. They invest for cash flow. They don't follow the accumulation model. That's nothing new to your listeners and some of your investors. But I think one of the things that I need to point out too is that they value philosophy. They value ideas, creativity, core beliefs, principles, and relationships. That's their biggest investments, right? Those are the things that they value. People with ideas, creativity, and they invest in themselves and relationships, not things. And I think that's so powerful to underline again, because how many billionaires have you seen lose it all, right? They took a chance, they went all in, and they lose it all. But then all of a sudden, they just build it back up, like in relative ease, right? Fairly quickly again. It's because they were focused on themselves, number one, and they valued these things such as philosophy, worldview, core beliefs, ideas, creativity, concepts, and people. No man's an island, and you and I had spoken about this before. How powerful relationships are, and building and nurturing relationships. So, looking at going into a recession, what a lot of these folks are telling me, that's their biggest investment right now. They're investing in relationships and their networks heavily, because that's what gets you through a recession, and also positions yourself not only just to survive, but thrive and prosper, because it's all going to come down to the strength of your network and your community, and then obviously what you can add to that community, and that's where the investment in yourself comes in. So some of the other stuff that I'll mention as well is that they value preparation over planning. I think Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. So I think from an accredited investor standpoint, when you look at an overall strategy, really, really nail it down and be prepared for whatever comes your way, right? Play out different scenarios. Look at your positioning as far as your assets, as far as your savings, and then your income sources, right? And try to figure out the vulnerability of all of it, right? Within an overall strategy. Markets go up, down, and sideways. Your strategy needs to be spot on and be able to perform in all three areas. So preparation over planning is massive. I always use the example when special forces, the United, SEAL teams, SEAL Team 6 or whatever special forces team you can think of, if they're being dropped off in a hot zone for a mission, those folks, they have an idea of they have a goal of what they're trying to accomplish, right? They have an idea of what they might go into, but they're prepared for anything. Everything's on the table once they're dropped off right there. Anything can happen at any given point in time, and those guys have to mentally prepare for it. So I think that's something that we can learn. And then the one thing that I keep harping on too is, what I've really picked up from my guests is the focus on strategy consistently over products. It's the golf swing over the golf clubs. I love watching golf. I'm not a very good golfer. I'm a horrible golfer, actually. But I love Ernie Els's swing. So if somebody would offer me, Ernie Els's swing or Ernie Els's clubs, supporting my fellow South African Ernie, I would definitely take the swing, right? 10 out of 10 times. The clubs is a byproduct, but I think sometimes we lose a little bit of focus because there's so many things going on. And, let's face it, collectively, we have the attention span of a gnat these days. So we're fairly all over the place as far as our attention span. But here's the other thing, Hunter, that I think people would find fascinating is the holistic approach to wealth creation. And I've been spending a lot of time with family office people, and I've got relationships and friendships with folks in that space. And it's almost that mysterious thing, right? People are always looking out on the outside. Ooh, what are those guys doing? On the inside, what are some of these secrets or these strategies? What I saw was just, it was quite amazing how simple it is, number one. And number two, the amount of time that these ultra wealthy, a single family office is $250 million and up net worth, the family, the amount of time that they spend on efficiencies, they spend, I would say, I would guesstimate around 90% of the focus is on efficiencies and looking at efficiencies and evaluating efficiencies. And the other part of it is spent on expanding and generating efficient income. Now, this is the whole concept of the holistic approach, where when we look at our health, we know we have to work out. We know we have to eat properly. We know we have to recover and sleep properly. And you can use that same example of that holistic approach in many different areas. Relationships, you have to give, you have to open yourself up to receiving, and then you have to grow together, right? But when it comes to wealth, sometimes we're just focused on driving returns and trying to figure out where to put our money to get the highest return, where these families really focus on the efficient placement of their savings with regards to wealth destroyers such as inflation, such as taxes and so forth, and then also asset positioning. They know, by the way, and they have a team of CPAs, asset protection folks, and so forth. And within the office, they know that, for instance, if they're able to reduce their taxes by 20%, let's just say, now that the tax environment is changing rapidly, let's just say you reduce your taxes by 20%. Think of that over the next 30 to 40 years as far as efficiency. What return do you need to get into the market if your core focus was just at finding a place to park money to generate a return? What return do you have to get to match that of getting a tax reduction of 20% over the course of 30 to 40 years? And then when we look at family offices, this goes on for generations, right? So it's really, really important. And then obviously the focus, which I know you've spoken about as well on the show, rather than diversify all over the place, all over different asset classes, all over, that they go all in and focus. But I think the core thing that I've seen that was just mind blowing is the attention to detail that is spent on the majority of the money that they already have, their personal and business economy and the many different businesses they have and so forth, of being efficient, and they're also getting that efficient income.
Yeah, you definitely touched on a ton of stuff there. Let's start back with the beginning. We'll work our way towards efficiency, because I definitely think that's a key point. The relationships is definitely something that has become more and more clear. I had a conversation with Grant Cardone in the program where he was basically saying, look, cash is not king in a recession. If you have a recession, everyone has cash, right? What you need is relationships. What you need not only to get through the relationships, I think that, not through the recession, but really to take advantage of the supply-demand disequilibriums that take place during recessions. So if you're not already building up your infrastructure, if you're not already really learning due diligence and taking action in the marketplace, when a recession happens, if you just take 20% off of prices right now, that doesn't mean that you all of a sudden are going to be a genius real estate investor. There's a lot of people that had problems investing back then because they didn't have a team in place. They didn't know what they were doing. So it's really all about the relationship and the knowledge. That's what actually allows you to scale. So it's important to be building up that. Right now, it's completely aligned with the central message that I've been trying to communicate to the listeners regarding the timing of the market cycle, because it's really critical right now, especially. Then also, you mentioned efficiency, and I think that this is something that I want to talk to you about a lot. So when I think of efficiency, I think of just ensuring that capital is reinvested, making sure that I don't have a lot of opportunity cost that's costing me like capital in the bank, et cetera. But then also, to your point, it's the net result that is most important. I was at Freedom Fest not too long ago. There's a lot of people there that are really hesitant to pay any taxes whatsoever. And I talked to some people that only invest in non-income states. They only invest in states where there is no income tax in that particular state. Now, I understand that, and I completely respect that strategy, but I feel like I have a fiduciary duty to my investors to focus on the net result. And it sounds like that net result is what they're focusing on, just at a higher level, a more detailed level, not only including taxes, but also including, the time at which you're invested. One of the ways this comes up all the time is when you do hard money loans. Hard money loans are a great way to just reinvest capital. But look, obviously you're paying taxes on that money. But more importantly, what happens 9 times out of 10 is that loan comes due, and then you sit for 3 months trying to find another one. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about? Or if not, give us some idea and some color into, regarding that efficiency and opportunity cost conversation.
Yeah. So the first one that you touched on is taxes, and this will be your greatest expense. And this is the biggest focus of these individuals and families, because they know if they don't control their taxes and how they pay their taxes and when they pay their taxes and the amount of taxes that they're paying, they know that it's going to be an uphill battle constantly. So yeah, from a positioning standpoint, let's use savings for an example. And we've spoken about this before, but there's basically 3 types of buckets, right? There's a tax now bucket where you would put your money, because money has to reside somewhere, rather than a tin can or just, under your mattress. It has to be somewhere. So do you put it in a place where it's taxed now and you just continue to pay the taxes on it now? Do you put it into an area where it's deferred, which is a phenomenal, you got to hand it to Wall Street. It's a phenomenal marketing term for meaning postpone.
Right.
Deferred means postponing. Okay, let's call it what it is. So do you postpone taxes? I mean, look at our environment right now. I just did some research for a project, Hunter. I almost fell off my chair. The $21 trillion isn't the sticker shock that I had. It's the other stuff on the usdebtclock.org. For any of your listeners that want to check it out, look at those entitlements, right? Unfunded liabilities. Look at the credit default swaps that's on there. It's quite staggering that what's going on. So this is the environment where nation states are bankrupt, states are bankrupt, municipalities are bankrupt, townships are bankrupt, towns are bankrupt. So do you think postponement in an environment like this, in a continuously changing environment, is a good idea? So those folks would eliminate those 2 buckets. And then there's of course buckets where you could put your money. And if your listeners want more detailed stuff, well, a Roth is not going to work for a lot of accredited investors because they make too much money to begin with. Then you look at municipal bonds. Well, there we just touched on a bankruptcy, and then we like to use high cash value life insurance for that tax-free bucket, because of the institution that it's with. There's a safety there, but then also the tax favorable treatment that it gets, right? So that immediately right there, we're not paying taxes as we go along now. We're not postponing taxes into the future. We're putting money in a vehicle with tax efficiencies, and then look at the other taxes that you're paying. And this is one part where, I completely understand. I wouldn't go as far as not investing in states that has a state income tax. And I don't think this is necessarily the way that folks go about it either, but it's looking at it big picture wise. You need to be mobile. It's more about where you live. For instance, if you're going to live in New Jersey or in New York or California, you really probably have to really, look at options and weigh out your options, right? And look at what's ahead there. So, but that's also a personal choice. Some folks like the weather over on the West Coast, and some folks like the city life of New York City, right? So it all ties in. But from a tax standpoint, there's a lot of folks that are moving to Puerto Rico, which you know of, right? A lot of folks at Freedom Fest that have moved down there. But there's a lot of stuff going on as far as tax efficiency, and I don't know how detailed you want me to get on that. But the other thing also is fees is a big one. Cash flow leaks, right? Cash flow leaks is a pretty big one, and this might be valuable for your listeners too, as far as managing debt, paying off debt, all that kind of stuff. I look at cash flow leaks in my personal economy and in my business economy constantly, because it's almost like trying to get into a boat and row to the other side of the lake, and there's a hole in your boat. So instead of grabbing, spending most of my time just getting water out of that boat, let's find the holes and plug them. Then we're going to sail easily and nicer to the other side. So when it comes to efficiency, as far as cash flow leaks, here's a couple of things that folks can do. A credit score is a big one. Doesn't matter how you want to cut it, because you could get more efficient loans. Where people how they pay their houses is a big one, right? If you look at the different mortgages that's out there, thinking like a bank from an efficiency standpoint and cash flow, a 30-year fixed mortgage is more preferable over a 15-year, because with a 15-year, you increase the cash flow of the bank right there for them, helping them out. You also decrease the risk that they have in the property. And of course, there's an opportunity cost of the extra money that you're paying for a 15 on top of the 30 that you could have invested somewhere else in other investments. That's just one way right there. If you have a bunch of loans, personal loans, credit cards, if you refinance, for instance, a property, if you can transfer that debt into a mortgage, now not only do you get a tax deduction from your mortgage interest, for instance, but you've also taken out the debt and more efficiently position it, right? And plug the cash flow leak. So increase the cash flow in the personal economy, business, and there's many, many other examples of that. For a business, for instance, I just did this last month. I run through all the memberships and the subscriptions and the tools that I have. Mm-hmm. You'll be surprised how much you're not using. So these are just practical things. I wanted to keep it at a level where, folks understand that there are things that you can be done, and also give a couple of practical solutions. But those are just some examples of how to be efficient with that, because the amount of money that flows through your personal economy and your business economy, the more you can hold on to and the more you can deploy to generate efficient income, the quicker you're going to get to your goals. Efficient income, basically, is looking at the cash flow quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki. On the left-hand side, we have the employee, the self-employed, and on the right-hand side, we have the business owner and the investor. Now, from a tax treatment, on the right-hand side, that's much more tax efficient from an income standpoint than on the left-hand side being an employee and a self-employed. So if you're a self-employed individual, and there might be listeners that are very high income earners having their own business, or they're professionals, right? They're executives, they're physicians, they're lawyers, and so forth. Your goal should be to figure out, how do I transfer the income that I'm making on the left-hand side to start generating income from the right-hand side. So that's what I mean about efficiency and income. But very important to be efficient in both of those areas. You're listening to the Cashflow Ninja podcast. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Life settlement investments have allowed financial and banking institutions to not only buy their equity contractually, but also diversify their capital from any economic, market, and geopolitical risk. It's been part of the billion-dollar blueprint followed by institutional investors. And if you're an accredited investor, you can also now participate in this vehicle with enormous growth potential. You can watch an informational webinar presented by one of the premier organizations providing life settlement investments, Penumbra Solutions, at cashflowninja.com/life settlements. You're listening to the Cashflow Ninja podcast, and now back to our interview.
One of the things you talk a lot about in your podcast and in some of the conversation we had is really this concept of legacy wealth. You know, the ability to create wealth for yourself and then transfer wealth to the next generation. What are some of your thoughts on that component, especially as it relates to ultra high net worth individuals?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So you can create and protect the wealth that you have right now, and then we're going to transfer it onto the next generation. And one of the things that I've observed and seen firsthand is how it's not just the assets that's being transferred onto the next generation, right? It's not just the assets. Money, you know, if you just transfer money and assets onto it, on average, it's gone after 18 months, really, truly. But if we look at it from a standpoint of transferring knowledge and intellectual capital, along with the money and the capital that they have, that becomes super, super powerful. So how do some of these families transfer the intellectual capital and the knowledge with the assets and the money that they have? Well, tactically, the assets and the money, that's through trusts, that's through insurance trust, estate planning. That's very, very tactical, right? That's kind of the easy part. How do you position your heirs or the next generation to be good stewards of that capital? And that's where it ties into setting up a family constitution, a statement of purpose and intent, and setting that up where the philosophy of the family is stated, right? Along with the vision and the mission of the family. You know, a lot of folks, and this is one of the things that I've learned, we all have a vision and a mission for our own lives and our businesses, but we don't really have it for our families and something to be transferred over. So maybe we have it for us, we have it for our business, but how about for the family? How about and this is a great conversation piece, by the way, to get both spouses on the same page, to bring up the subject about money for the family, what the family wants, what does our life look like? What do we stand for? What is our mission? What are we trying to accomplish here? And then the philosophy is, what is our worldview? You know, are we producers or creators, or are we consumers? Are we going to try and learn high income skill sets and try to create as much value as humanly possible for the marketplace and for other people out there, right? Not to get too Ayn Randish, but these are important things to talk about, because you will end up with trust fund babies if that conversation is not had, right?
Yeah, that's actually a great point. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's something that, especially when it comes to this topic, this conversation, I think it's really neglected. A lot of, obviously, all the listeners on my program, all the listeners on your program, that's a huge part of their life, is to acquire, to grow capital. And then when it comes to transferring it, it's a very challenging situation. This is something I don't know a lot about, but I've been very, I live in LA, right? I've seen a lot of trust funds go wrong, as they say. One of the things that kind of comes to mind is one time I was looking for, basically I was trying to watch a movie where the person that was the main lead was wealthy but wasn't the worst person ever. It's very hard to find that, by the way. And I ended up finding a documentary called Born Rich.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be about this baller lifestyle and how awesome it is. No, it's really frightening is what it is. It's really frightening story about some people. Like, one of the kids is an inheritor of a big portion of the Johnson & Johnson that whole company. Ivanka Trump is in it, who is by far the most normal person out of everyone. Everyone else is really, they struggle with a lot of psychological problems that goes along with getting a huge amount of money and not having that intellectual net worth, which is tied there, be passed along appropriately. So, I don't want to get into many specifics. Obviously, it's very personal, but what are some of the ways that you are planning on doing that? Because I know that growing wealth is a huge part of this, and I know that, you're in the process of growing your own family.
Yeah, I think setting that family statement of purpose up is going to be cardinal, right? So that's the first part, the vision, the mission, to pull all of that stuff. And then the second part is bringing in the team. The kind of the family office model, the team of advisors or people that would support them. And this obviously, there'll be transfers with that, right? But if we have a core document for team members that's going to support this family and look after them, then they're going to be aligned with what the family wants and the strategy that, for instance, the overall core essentials of a strategy is your number one asset, right? Your biggest investment is in yourself. And in relationships, and then back into your own business, right? Just around yourself, having control, alignment and focus, efficiency we talked about, savings, asset positioning, income, protection, risk management, dollar maximization, $1 doing many different jobs at the same time, momentum, having uninterrupted compounding within a strategy, and multiplying that, and then obviously collapsing time. So those individuals have to be on board with that, and those are the team members that you bring in. So you have a document, kind of a rule document for the family. You have the family office model, kind of advisors coming in. That's also bound to a core philosophy and a strategy. And strategies can be adjusted because it changes, right? But the core tenets are the same. And then the other part of that too is the family retreat, which that's something that I'm planning for my family too, to do four retreats or vacations per year, where these are the things that you talk about. You talk about money, you talk about goal setting, you talk about growing, you talk about what we're trying to accomplish here. You transfer principles and values onto to the children. This is actually something that the Rothschilds started in Europe, right? In the book, The Five Men from Frankfurt, they actually talk about the family retreat because the Rothschilds were positioned and situated all over Europe, of course, in all of the power centers, but they would always get together in a family retreat, share best practices, talk about, the strategy for the overall family, what they're doing. The Rockefellers modeled it on those guys. You don't have to be a Rockefeller or a Rothschild to be able to do the same things, just on a small scale, to have massive influence for it. Because I think, these are great questions, because you see it so many times where the first generation work really, really hard. The second one kind of manage it. The third one, it's gone, right? So how do you do that? Well, if you have core tenets in place and you have folks, and again, relationships of the family guiding the family, you're setting up something that's not going to be destroyed in the next generation or the generation after them or the generation after them.
Yeah, I really like that, especially when you mentioned, really struck home, because I have been so focused on personal values, core values, doing those types of codifying those thoughts into reality. And it's all been focused on business. And that is a really, really good key takeaway, to really focus the same energy towards the family. And, this is where we want to be in 3 years. This is where we want to be in 5 years. And it doesn't have to be, about finance. Of course, it can also be about things like, this is what our relationships should sound like. This is what, the types of things that we should talk about. That's a really brilliant idea. And it's something that I had not considered until this conversation. That actually brings you to an interesting question. You mentioned a lot about core values, and I'm interested to hear, what are some of the core values that drive you and drive your business?
It's so if you go to my website, producerswealth.com, on the homepage, because I feel that this is something that you should put out there, because if you're going to talk about your core values and principles, then you're going to attract people that respect that, and also want to be around. Maybe they have some of the same tenets, right? So I codified it in what I call the producer's code. And the first part is producers know that they themselves are their greatest asset. We've talked about that their greatest investments is in themselves and relationships in their business. I talk about how the producers value relationships that increase production and creation. Producers focus on solving problems and creating outcomes for the marketplace. Producers live with intent, making an impact in their families, communities, and the marketplace. Producers optimize wealth by controlling it. Producers value preparation over planning. Producers value protection over tolerance. Producers value production and creation over consumption. Producers value abundance over scarcity. Producers execute strategies based on principle and philosophy. Producers are independent, self-reliant, and free human beings. Producers value private property, contracts, and the non-aggression principle. And producers know that success is their ethical and moral obligation and duty, and producers own and control their future. So those are just I put it all together in the producer's code and put it on the homepage of my website. But those are the values and principles that we operate in with our company and myself and my family as well.
I really like that. And I really appreciate you sharing that. I know that you did put it on your website, but that's the playbook of your life, right? So it's a very personal thing. And I really appreciate you going through that. Just to let you know and to let the listeners know, every morning when I do go through my morning routine, I do kind of repeat my personal core values as well. And I think they're all things that it's really investor focused, right? Honesty, transparency, incentive alignment, and lifelong relationships.
Yep.
It's really simple. And I just try to that's the blueprint. That's the algorithm for all my decisions. So whenever I start to feel confused about whether or not I should do something, it's a question of, does this move line up with my core values, and does it help us achieve the goals that we've set out in the Vivid Vision, which is discussed there. But it's similar to what you're talking about, right? It makes decisions making really easy. If you go through your producer's code that you just went through, you're like, look, does this move meet this algorithm?
Right.
Does the algorithm, which is the producer's code, give you a result that suggests you move forward? So again, I really do appreciate you kind of going through that. And actually, while we're on the topic of morning routines, I wanted to give you an opportunity. Do you have a morning routine? Is that part of your life? Is that something that you've considered implementing as well?
Yes, it's changed quite a bit since my son has come into my life. So I bet. I definitely have a lot more flexibility, but yeah, I try to get some physical activity in, whether it's working out or whether it's just getting moving for the day. My wife and I do change up quite often who works out when. You've got to plan all these things when you've got a little one running around.
Right.
So, but I like to have a moment to myself, get my day organized. I go over the things that I'm grateful for. I express, start the day with gratitude. And then I write down my goals for the day. I look at my goals for the month. I look at my goals for the quarter, and then also for the year of where I am in tracking, right? And then I also do some training every day online, whether it be a course, a seminar. So I get some training in, and I read at least in half an hour, and then I get my day started. So I've taken care of my body. I've taken care of my mind as far as where I am. Am I aligned with my goals and my mission and my vision? And then we do a little bit of training because, the mind has to be trained just like every other muscle, and then and read a little bit. So, and then of course I listen to quite a bit of audiobooks during the day when I do my work and do my creative stuff too. But you made a very important point, Hunter, to these things, right? So, having a solid foundation and a framework such as this makes the rest easy because, tactically and vehicles that you integrate and merge and how you accomplish certain things, that'll change a little bit. And that's more mechanical, right? But I think if you have the foundation down, you have the framework set up, and you have all these other things that serves as a checklist or a reference for decision making, it makes things just so much more easier, and it helps you stay aligned and on course.
I love it. You mentioned reading. Very curious. I know you read a lot. What are some of the favorite books you've read in 2018?
There's quite a number. Collusion is quite a good one from Naomi Prince that I just finished. I'm actually busy with a great one by by Garrett Gunderson too. It's called The 5-Day Weekend. That's a pretty good book. And there's quite a number, but Collusion was a really good one by Naomi Prince. I've had her on my show too, talking about it. Would highly recommend that. But there's quite a lot out there. Sometimes I get overwhelmed because I'm one of those guys that stack a couple of books in my office, right?
Yeah, I know you are. We've definitely gone through a ton of book suggestions, and I actually haven't read either of those, so I will definitely take a look at both of those. Let me ask you a couple of tactical questions then. What are some of the tools that you're using right now that you've been able to really maximize your efficiency, your productivity? Are there anything like that you've found over the last year or so that you could share with the listeners?
Yeah. So tactically, and this is a lot of what we teach. We stay on the wealth formula. You know, and the wealth formula that we use is the mental capital times our relationship capital is our financial capital. And then, of course, from a tactical standpoint, if you have an income goal, like a passive income goal, for instance, for the year, we look at that. We look at the consistent return we're getting. You know, if you, for instance, want to make $360,000 of passive income and you can get a consistent return of 8%, we know we have to deploy about $4.5 million into that, right? Then we align protective and defensive modes within an overall strategy. We create and build systems. We keep it very, very simple. Liquidity, income, and growth. Our liquidity system, we utilize, as I've discussed previously on your show, insurance products through the infinite banking concept. And then we leverage that to invest for income in passive income generators that we call, our syndication plays, mobile home park syndications, and so forth. But the integration is a big part that allows the same dollar to do many different things. So tactically, drawing on that from that strategy that I've done earlier, we stay within it. We keep it simple. We try to have the same dollar doing many different functions at the same time. We maintain momentum because when you do that, it collapses time, meaning just it reduces and compresses the time, what allows you to get outcomes. So we invest for cash flow. We always want to be tax advantageous as possibly. We want to get equity in an asset class. We want to get appreciation, controlled leverage, and of course, always protect ourselves from wealth destroyers, inflation, and taxes, as we covered in debt. So yeah, tactically, we have our framework, we have our foundation, we have a whole process that we walk through of all the goals that we want to accomplish and achieve in many areas. But I think a big takeaway too, and you and I have spoken about it, is that efficiency part of it. Because just think about it this way: if you've plugged all of your cash flow leaks, you have reduced your taxes and protected yourself, you have the same dollar doing many, many different jobs within your personal or your business economy, and you have efficient income streams coming in. I mean, now you've got a pretty good situation where you can keep on creating and producing, protect what you have, and keep multiplying wealth in any economy.
Awesome. Well, I think that was actually a really great summary of the entire conversation, just touching on all those major points. And again, I really appreciate going through that level of detail just on a variety of topics. So, MC, before we jump off, let the listeners know how they can learn more about your firm and get in touch with you and your company.
The website is producerswealth.com. And actually, Hunter, there's a video course that I'll make available to your listeners. They can check it out at yourownbankingsystem.com. There's a webinar, then also a video course where I chopped up a lot of different topics into smaller, easily digestible pieces, about 30 minutes each. So they could check it out at yourownbankingsystem.com. And feel free to check out the podcast if you're interested in other cash flow strategies at cashflowninja.com.
Awesome. Well, all those will be included in the show note page. MC, can't thank you enough. Thanks again, buddy.
Thank you so much, Hunter. It was a blast as always. MC Laubscher here, the creator and host of the Cashflow Ninja and president of Producers Wealth. And I'm on a mission to help you achieve economic and financial freedom as quickly as possible. I achieve this by integrating the infinite banking concept with real estate investments to increase your efficiency and returns and recapture cash flow that you're not even aware of that you're losing. I share the number one strategy for investors in my holistic wealth creation course at yourownbankingsystem.com. That's yourownbankingsystem.com. Thank you for joining me again on the Cashflow Ninja. Thank you for all your support. You rock. If you like what you hear and appreciate what we're trying to build here at the Cashflow Ninja, please subscribe, rate, and review our show on iTunes and share our show with family, friends, and your network. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can sign up for our newsletter at cashflowninja.com or text Cashflow Ninja to 44222. I'm also posting daily videos on Facebook and YouTube and will live stream weekly starting May 2018. To make sure you don't miss any of the live streams, please like and subscribe to my Facebook and YouTube platforms. I'm also dropping content on Instagram daily. Be sure to follow us on Instagram to get in on the action. I want to thank you for spending your most precious resource with me today, your time. That's our show for today. Until next time, live a life of passion and purpose on your terms. This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. The information being presented and considered does not consider your particular financial objectives or situation, and it does not make personalized recommendations. This material is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified tax and legal advisor or other qualified professionals, and you should not use the information in place of a customized consultation with a licensed professional regarding your specific personal financial objectives, situation, and needs. We believe the information provided is reliable, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, timeliness, or completeness.